I once had an extraordinary experience. It blew me away. It changed my life. And it happened in the strangest way. I was spinning in a centrifuge really fast. My eyeballs were being pushed to the back of my head. I was going 6 Gs, that's 6 times the force of gravity. And it felt like I had a ton of bricks on that were flattening me. But I had a moment of bliss, not because of the discomfort of going so fast, but in spite of it. I had a peak experience, a moment that brings together everything that has meaning for us, our body, our mind, and spirit into one place. It was incredible. Let me tell you how I got there. So a few years ago, I was forced to change jobs, and the career counselor at the company I was working at said to me, "So what do you want to do now?" Now, I've always had this dream since I've been about this big, but I never really dared to tell anybody about it, certainly not in any kind of official way. But I was thinking, since the career counselor was asking and was going to give me a training to help me secure my next job, maybe I should go for it. So I looked at the career counselor straight in the eye, and I said, "The thing I want to do now is be an astronaut." And the career counselor looked at me and said, "Come on, what do you really want to do?" And I said, "No, really, this is it. This is what I want to do." And I managed to convince the career counselor to send me away to the States, to a flight training school. And it was there that I got to wear this flight suit for the very first time. And this flight training school had a centrifuge. And for those of you who don't know what a centrifuge is, it's something you get inside, like a merry-go-round or a carousel, and it spins really fast and goes in 3 directions at the same time. And it's used for pilots and astronauts to help get them used to the differences in G-forces. And my thoughts were, as I was about to get inside of one of these, this is the moment of truth. I could potentially discover that I'm not meant to be doing this if I feel the limitations of my physical body, and perhaps my dream of becoming an astronaut, my lifelong dream, could be coming to a crashing halt. But luckily, what happened to me inside the centrifuge was just the opposite. As I was spinning around and around and around, all I can do was smile from ear to ear. And I felt incredible. It was amazing. I felt completely like this was what I was meant to be doing. And for me, time stopped. It was just incredible. And for that moment, I knew that this is what I was meant to be doing, and that I knew my life would change forever from this point on. What I felt has a name. It's called a peak experience. Other astronauts have had peak experiences when they've gone to space and looked back at the Earth and seen the Earth from all of its beauty and had a feeling of oneness with the universe. In fact, this very special type of peak experience is called the overview effect. Now, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, one of the Apollo 13 astronauts, had this very thing happen to him, and probably was one of the first people who admitted it when he was standing on the moon from this point, looking at the Earth, and had what he calls an epiphany in space, where he felt from every cell in his body that he was connected to everything and everyone. And he was ecstatic when he was experiencing this. He felt that we were all made from the same thing, stardust. And Dr. Edgar Mitchell, when he went to space, was a very rational man. But when he returned, he came back a changed man. And I know that I felt something similar to Edgar Mitchell when I was inside the centrifuge. Now, the overview effect has gotten a lot of attention recently because of social media, because we can now see what astronauts see in space. We can, with all these videos out there, but we can't quite feel what they feel, and that is weightlessness. And I would venture to say that most of us have not felt this, nor have had any kind of peak experience. But we're fascinated by those people, like astronauts, or people who climb mountains, who dare to do these very risky things in order to have that possibility of enjoying this peak experience. But it got me thinking, can we potentially achieve the overview effect here on Earth? How would we go about doing something like that? And one way we could actually try to do it is the way Edgar Mitchell did, which is going to space. Now, there's a new industry out there called new space or commercial space for anybody who has the money, a substantial amount, to go on a 1-hour journey into space. And these flights will probably be starting in 2018. And on that 1-hour flight, you'll be able to, as the plane is on its apogee, experience about 4 minutes of weightlessness. And before that time, you'll be having high G-forces on launch and going back into the Earth's atmosphere on re-entry, also experiencing high G-forces. Now that's what I was practicing when I was in the centrifuge, going around, and those differences in G-forces, because it's not like anything we've experienced here on Earth. In fact, maybe the closest we can come is 3 Gs on a roller coaster, on a really fast one, for a few seconds. But these commercial space flights are going to be 6 Gs in various forces on your body in different directions. So it's quite out of this world. Now, and actually, without any kind of practice or training, things get even more intense. In fact, I remember somebody on my space training, because we were able to see each other in the centrifuge going around and around. And the person that you would never have thought would be the one to experience the fear that he felt was the biggest, strongest, most muscular guy. And you couldn't predict that he would have a problem more than I would have a problem. And yet, I'll never forget his face when he was spinning around. He had a face something like this, which was pretty startling because nobody expected that. And, okay, this wasn't him, and he was wearing a shirt, but it was like this. And he was turning colors that were not on the color spectrum, and I'm pretty sure he released some bodily fluids, if you know what I'm saying. So it was crazy in there. And, it just got me thinking that, I know this was a course that I was on to help people physically prepare for these differences in G-forces, but what about preventing something like this from happening? Somebody who is completely freaked out. Were there any courses out there to help people mentally prepare for their space flight? And when I asked at the training center, they said there were no courses. And I knew that I had to create a course to fill this need. And so I did. And I spent the next couple of years teaching people how to stay calm and have a peak experience. But let's just back up for a second. Imagine you are one of those 6 lucky people who might be going to fly on a space flight next year. Now, at the moment, the space operators that are flying are not requiring any kind of training to go into space. Hard to believe. All you need to do is pay your money, have a good EKG, a good heart, and off you go. Now, when I was thinking about this guy in the centrifuge, I started to think, multiply this by 6. What are the potential things that could happen while all 6 people who haven't been trained are going to experience? Well, one person can hyperventilate. Somebody else could potentially panic. Someone might lose their cookies. Someone might need a diaper. Somebody might be so overly excited they flail around and by accident kick you in the head. There's 6 people and there's only 3 windows. And so every time you want to look at the Earth, there might be some conflict between people. Does this sound like a calm, peaceful, life-changing experience? To me, it sounds like a recipe for a disaster. And furthermore, for every minute that you're not fully in the moment, it's wasting about $8,000. So it pays to prepare, because what's left of the space flight is essentially the physical experience of weightlessness, and you might get some views in space, but chances are you'll be walking off the space flight, scratching your head, thinking, I missed it. By the time I got calm and started to understand what was happening all around me, the flight was over. Now, that would be a shame. But that's just the physical feeling of going on one of these space flights. What if you want to experience the one and only overview effect, that feeling of oneness with the universe? How would you go and prepare for that? Well, I said earlier that the overview effect is a type of peak experience. So we can use the research from peak experience to also help us try to achieve the overview effect. Now, peak experience has, achieving one of these things, the research says there's 2 conditions that need to be met. The first is having full awareness, and the second is being in flow. And I will explain both of those things. But even if you have full awareness and in flow, there is no guarantee that you are going to have a peak experience, because you also need a bit of luck, or some people would say an act of grace. But one thing is for sure, if you're not in full awareness or in flow, ain't nothing going to happen to you. So it's good to go and try to prepare for both of these conditions. So let's talk about full awareness. Well, full awareness is understanding what's going on outside of you, externally, what's going on inside the space plane, and also what's going on inside of you. And pilots call what's going on outside of you situational awareness. So understanding what the situation is, who's there, what's going on, what's coming up next. The personal awareness is the awareness of what's going on inside of you, and only you can say that and feel that. So I've created a word that I'm hoping is going to catch on, and it's called Babusa. And Babusa stands for something, and I use it to help commercial astronauts try to become fully aware, both externally and internally. So I'm wondering, who wants to do some space training in here? Raise your hands. Yeah, all right. Excellent, let's do it together. So Babusa has, each of the letters in Babusa stands for something. So if we do this together, the first one, probably one of the most important steps, is to breathe, and the breath is the link between the body and the mind, and it's the bridge that will keep us calm when we're feeling stressed. So I'd like everybody to take a deep breath in and then hold it and blow it out. Good, you're pros already. All righty, now observe, very important step. Look around you, observe your surroundings. Check out the person sitting next to you. Maybe that's the crazy person that's going to kick you in the head. You never know, but it's good to be prepared. So check it out, look who's around you, and see what's happening. And if that thought might be a little bit unsettling, then let's go and, again, breathe another deep breath in, hold it, and then breathe it out. Okay, good. Feeling a little bit better. Now, U stands for understanding what's coming up in the flight profile. Are you at launch? Are you at weightlessness? Or are you going to be coming into preparing for re-entry? Because each of these different flight phases will have different breathing techniques that you might need to master before you can actually go into that safely. Okay, sense. This is now going back inside and doing a scan of what's going on internally. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you hearing? And only you know how you're doing now. So go back inside, take a scan, relax. Okay, and now that you have this calm feeling, you want to anchor it. And you anchor it by introducing a trigger. And a trigger is, I use my thumb, squeezing my thumb as my trigger. So every time I go through Babusa, my body and my mind start to get the connection of calmness and then squeezing the thumb. Calmness, squeezing the thumb, going through the sequence. And soon, this connection becomes stronger and stronger and stronger that I don't need to go through the sequence anymore. All I can use is squeezing my thumb, and the body relaxes instantly. Now, you could actually even intensify this if you want to use neurofeedback tools, which is what I do in my space training. So you can make that connection quicker and quicker and quicker, and then you can use this anytime and anywhere. In fact, it's not just for space, because before I came on stage, I also used it, and it works. So it's the tool that gives us the full awareness as well as help calm us down when we need it. Okay, anybody have a peak experience? Now, I wouldn't think so, because remember we said the peak experience has 2 components, full awareness and being in flow. So I'd like to talk now about what it is to be in flow. Now, being in flow is enjoying an activity so much, being so engaged, that you're completely in the moment and you lose track of time. And athletes and musicians tend to have this all the time. Some people say that they're in the zone, and that's when they do really good, high-performing, that's when they perform their best. So I'm curious if anybody has had this wonderful feeling of being in the flow, maybe by doing a project in school that you've been so engrossed with that you've just completely lost track of time. Anyone? See a couple hands? Good. This is a good sign that you too can have a peak experience. So if you have full awareness and you're in flow and a little bit of luck, you too can achieve a peak experience, because space is not just for the elite, and the overview effect is not just for astronauts. You can achieve the overview effect here on Earth. Yes, here on Earth. And so the next time that you might have a difficult project, like a test or a presentation, that has a little bit, and gives you a little bit of fear, you can take these tools that we've done today and turn that fear into joy. And if you do that, and I do that, and this idea spreads, we'll be on our way to achieving our bolder, bigger world. Thank you.